Hey everybody, and welcome back to the show. We've got a guest all the way over here with us today, who's all the way over the other side of the world. Jay, is it Feldman? Is that how you say your last name? Feldman?
Yep,
Yeah, yeah,
Feldman.
yeah.
Yeah.
And he's got a program called the Energy Balance Program, and he does a podcast as well. And if you've obviously a client of mine, you'll know who he is. And you might have listened to some of his awesome podcasts. He's 25. He's not married, but he does have a girlfriend. He has no kids. He's got 2 cats and a possum. He's just telling about his bloody possum that he's been rescued. But we won't talk about that because he's not supposed to be having this possum. But thanks so much for coming on. It's so nice to talk to another. I mean, I don't want to call you a Ray Peter, but someone who has been inspired by the work of Ray Pete and other people. But maybe, Jay, you can just tell everyone just briefly a bit about your background and how you found Ray's work.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me. It's nice to be in this community of people who have all been inspired in the same way. And yeah, so I, like many people, wanted, a lot of it was wanting to be in shape and wanting to look like the people that we see on TV and in movies and in magazines and really everyone, Instagram now. So I fell into the eat less, exercise more idea when I was pretty young, and it really wasn't working because my issue at the time was that I was very lean, but I didn't have very much muscle, and when it wasn't working, I just pushed harder, and that led to trying a lot of other things that didn't end up working. I fell into low carb and paleo, and was finding that those things weren't working. And not only were they not working for me, but they weren't working for the people who I was sharing them with. And it all changed pretty drastically when I did find Ray Pete's work, and completely changed my view of health and nutrition and my view of the world around me and my relationship with food, for sure, where instead of this constant restriction and hunger weighing me down, and this constant feeling of wanting, waiting for the next meal, wondering what, looking at at the clock, waiting for the next meal. It's obviously completely the opposite now. And yeah, completely changed my health and the way that I feel. And then it's allowed me to do the same for a lot of other people who I've worked with. So.
It's such a good, I really love my work. I'm sure you do too. And it's just so, when you get incredible messages from, I mean, you work with men and women, we work with women, just saying that they're feeling so much better and they're sleeping and they love food again. And it's just, yeah, I think anyone who does this and gets right into it and starts to feel so much better just wants to shout it from the rooftops. Like even our clients, they're like, oh, I annoy people now, Kitty, telling them about the sugar and the juice and the ice cream. Now you work with both men and women. We work with predominantly women. We've got a few men that we're working with in a men's program that we're sort of beta testing, but the majority of women that come to us, they've done a lot of restrictive diets to try and, lose weight. And I say tone up because I think that's what most women understand. They want to have that more toned and athletic physique. And, you'd probably get people too that come to you and they've dieted themselves into a corner. And you actually did a couple of good podcasts recently on weight loss and cutting calories. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about, what the problem is and why you're never ever going to achieve the results that you want by just eating 1,200 calories and cutting out sugar and carbs and all the good stuff.
Yeah. And I would say also with both the men and women that I work with, I don't think I've had anybody come to me who has been eating enough.
Yeah.
Almost always that is one of the biggest issues, and it's understandable. It's a big psychological hurdle to get over when we're told about a regular 2,000 calorie a day diet, or at max a 2,500 calorie a day diet. And for most people, if they want to lose weight, they're doing a lot less than that. As you said, 1,200 calories isn't common. And a lot of it, I would say, really comes back to this larger idea of eating less and exercising more to lose weight, which also ties along with this idea that if we're overweight, it's because we aren't trying hard enough. And it's very damaging psychologically. And a lot of times the people, I would say that virtually everybody is always trying to lose weight and trying relatively hard too.
Mm.
I don't think the issue is ever not trying hard enough for probably for anybody listening to this. I mean, they're invested in their health, and yeah, that the eating less and exercising more does work in the short term. It does allow for weight loss, but it also comes at the cost of our health. It comes at the cost of depressing our metabolism because
Mm.
we reduce the energy available all the way down to the cellular level, and then everything in our body says that we can't use as much energy, and it slows down all of our processes from our brain function to our reproductive function and all these other issues, which leads to so many symptoms and conditions that we're seeing nowadays. And it puts us in this starvation state where we're constantly hungry, and we're much more likely to store the food that we take in as fat because our body is trying to survive. That's its main priority, and when it's in that sort of stress state. And yeah, it leads to disaster, especially when it happens long term. I mean, that's this kind of yo-yo diet cycle that we see the vast majority of people on, where even if they do happen to lose weight, it's only for a short period of time until they gain most of it back or all of it back, and more.
I think it's important, like, and it's particularly bad with women, I think, and I've been through it myself, and I don't know about you, but the binge eating, like your willpower really can only last you so long before you just like, oh, I just need to eat sugar. Like I would polish off like packets of corn chips and whole tubs of, like I'd literally eat till I felt sick.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I
Oh, me
think,
too.
yeah. And it's like, and I would always have this like Sunday night, I'd think I'm just going to eat everything because I'm going to start fresh Monday
Mm.
and this will be the last time I'll binge. And I tell myself that every single time. And I'm sure so many other women do the same thing. And then they'll start again fresh and they might be good for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And then it's like this same cycle. And like you say, they undereat, slow down their resting metabolic rate. They deplete their body of nutrients, progesterone, over-exercise. And you end up eating shit. Like, you don't reach for a nice cup of juice or some fruit or honey. You're eating all these vegetable oils and polyunsaturated fats, and you're right, your body stores it, and you see it like these women just each year get fatter and fatter. And it just, I also find too, like the older I got, the harder it was for me to stick to it. I could stick to it for less time. I mean, you're a lot younger than me. I'm 25. And the
Yeah.
women in
Yeah.
our program, we're not old. Old is not the right word, but like in our 40s, a lot of women in their 40s and 50s. But, do you see the same thing with clients as well, that binge restrict cycle?
Absolutely. I saw it in myself. So for me,
Mm.
chocolate chips was the go-to, where I would polish off a whole bag. um, but excuse me. All right. Yeah. So I experienced that myself for sure. And yeah, I've seen that with so many people, that binge and restrict cycle. And as you said, when you do go into that binge, it's never binging on healthy or good foods. And
Mm.
another aspect of that cycle that we don't often think about, you mentioned that every year, we're typically heavier and heavier. And normally when somebody who's overweight is looking at their body, all they're thinking is that I want to be leaner. And every single year they do the same thing where they continue to try to be leaner. But if they were to have the foresight, if you look forward and consider the fact that everybody tends, unless they're doing something drastically different, if they look 5 years out, they're always heavier. If they look 10 years out, they're always heavier. If you look at your pictures from 5 or 10 years ago, you always like the way that you look better. And I think one thing that helps with is taking us out of this mindset of needing a short-term result, because that's
Mm.
really what all of the diets are, is it's lose 10 pounds in 10 days, 2 weeks, a month, whatever it is.
Mm.
And not to say that you can't do that successfully, but what we really
What
want to have in
cost?
mind is what's that?
At what cost? Like you say,
Exactly.
it absolutely works, but what else suffers? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a long-term solution. And
Mm.
if we instead consider that I've been trying this diet thing for a long time, maybe I should. I think a lot of times it comes down to focusing on doing things that are healthy for us in the long term, and that
Mm.
also, the weight loss comes with that. And yeah, having that kind of, because it helps. It's hard to eat more. It's hard to get over the idea of eating more when you're so scared of losing weight, or sorry, of gaining weight. So
Mm.
having that kind of long-term goal in mind, I think is really helpful in recentering where we're at psychologically.
I think too, like I've found, I think women really underestimate the time it takes to, because a lot of clients that come to us have been dieting for 10 years, 20 years, or they've got some really severe, metabolic issues, digestive issues, or hormonal imbalances. And it can take a good 6 to 12 months, if not more, just to actually fix those issues and, build up your body's ability to handle more calories. And, I think too, like a lot of women, and you could probably comment on this, is like obviously the training nutrition is one part, but then there's the external factors, the stresses, so like work stress, partner stress, any sort of other emotional stress, then there's all like the environmental, like toxins, creams. So that's all of this stuff that is impacting your body and putting stress on your body. And you might be doing the nutrition and training, right? But then, I don't think people realize how much effect those other things also have, because it's all stress, right? And
Mhm.
basically what we're trying to do is lower stress on the body so it can heal itself, and replenish itself with all these nutrients. Do you find that too with clients? Like it's like they're doing good in the nutrition and the training, but then, I think they underestimate the external factors.
Yeah, and they go hand in hand, right?
Mm,
I've had a lot of clients come to me with pretty severe anxiety,
mm,
and there's definitely a lot to be said for working on the perspective through which we see the world and
mm,
trying to change some of our thought processes so that we don't have the same anxiety or stress from the same stimulus. That there's definitely something to be said for that. But by the same token, taking out harder to digest foods or fixing a gut issue also typically goes a really long way as far as reducing something like anxiety or stress goes. It makes it a lot
mm,
easier to be calmer, and because you don't have those stress hormones at such a high level, or you don't have these toxins from the gut that are inhibiting our ability to produce energy and relax, which
mm,
when we think of having more energy, sometimes we think of kind of hyperactivity, but in reality it's typically more of a relaxed energy. And so
mm,
yeah, it all goes hand in hand. And when we consider the fact that this we've had all of these different stresses going on for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years,
mm,
and the entire time our bodies are adapting to it. They're trying to survive in that sort of state. So it takes time to then shift all of those different stimuli into a much more, I don't know, a much more comfortable environment for our
mm,
bodies, much more energetically favorable environment. It takes some time for our bodies to then shift the other way. They have to start adapting towards that and start to, and that's really what then leads to the raising of metabolism, the dropping of stress hormones, and then the weight loss typically comes with that.
mm, which takes time.
Yeah, exactly. It takes time. Yeah.
I think we get it. It's we were just talking about this before we started the podcast about the fitness industry, and you're constantly scrolling through, and that, like, and look, I often look at other fitness models, like quite lean, real, like muscular fitness models. I think, oh, they look so amazing, and I think, oh, I need to be leaner, but then I'm like, oh, I can't do it. Like, I can't. I know what it takes to be lean like that, and you sacrifice your sleep, you sacrifice your energy. But when I think women and men too, when you're constantly surrounded by these images of lean, athletic, fitness models, and they're eating green vegetables, and it's hard to block out the noise, I think, and hard to, go, I'm just going to focus on the long game.
Yeah, yeah, it is. And I do think it is just as much, probably about just as much of an issue with men. I think it's just not talked about as much because
Mm,
I don't know, we think of men as I don't know, not not as affected by those sorts of things, or
yeah.
when we think of who's eating more, it's always the assumption that men are eating more. But I'm pretty astounded by how little I see a lot of people eating with men eating with the intention of wanting to stay leaner and wanting to lose weight. And yeah, and you had mentioned how much it, like the cost of getting to the point of some of those models, and or whether it's on Instagram or whatever, and yeah, it comes at the cost of your health. And people, I think, when they see that, they expect that whoever that is always looks like that, and that they are at their healthiest. And I think it's very rare that either of those things are true. Normally that is a very short moment in time in between bulks or whatever it is,
Mhm,
periods where they have much more weight on them, they look a lot less lean. Also the amount of drugs or other supplements that are used to get to that point, and then
mhm.
also the cost to their health, where where we assume that that's what's healthy just because that's what's put in front of us. But in reality, it's typically far from it.
And that's why we recommend clients do a social media detox. Yeah.
Yeah. Seriously.
Because I think it's I'm just trying to think of how to articulate this, but you can try and be better and put yourself in the right mindset. But when you're constantly getting triggered by things, I think it's better just to remove the triggers while you're working on healing and working on your mindset around your body and yourself. Because I think a lot of women and probably men do the same thing. Like they'll get into this position where they're so unhappy and unhealthy and they've got a lot of weight to lose and they just hate themselves, and they say bad things to themselves and things that they would never ever say to another person. And I think that's all part of the process of healing too, is love. Like it's okay to want to improve your body and your health, but still love the body that you've got now and that you're in. But I also think too that when you start eating more and you're feeling better and sleeping better, I don't know. I don't think you're as hard on yourself. It's easier to play the long game. Would you agree?
Yeah. I would say, I mean, it feels a lot more comfortable that way. And I think it makes pretty much anything easier when you don't have those constant hunger signals, your body constantly yelling at you that it wants more food.
That's actually an interesting, I think that so many people have moved away from, like, we just ignore what our body tells us. I think that's a real problem.
Yeah.
Can you comment on that?
Yeah. I think that is something that I've also found more and more is how much we do ignore our bodies, and how, I mean, it's something that I'll talk about without thinking much of it, is that I ate a certain meal and this was the way I felt after. And other people are pretty surprised that I could notice such a thing from just a small shift in what I ate or the amount of something that I ate. And it's a practice of listening to how you feel. And the more you pay attention to it, the more you see those nuances of was I irritable 2 hours later after this happened, or was I feeling lethargic and tired, or did I feel like I had a lot of energy and I was really, my brain was really clear when normally it's foggy, or I wasn't as bloated, or I didn't have as much gas, or, any sorts of other gut, I felt really light. Those are things that most of us aren't really paying attention to most of the time. And just paying attention to those things, I think, yeah, it takes you a long way. And then when you think of something like a hunger signal, we have this assumption, we mentioned this to start, where, we're naturally, like, anybody who is giving into their hunger signals is lazy and they're just weak. And that's not the case. There's a reason why those hunger signals are there. And if they are there, it means that your body is starving for energy. And a lot of times it's because we're not feeding it the right foods, not enough of the right foods. So even when we eat enough food and we feel physically full, we're still hungry because our hunger signals are still telling us, like, hey, these foods that you're eating aren't producing the energy that we need, so we need you to eat more. And that can lead to what you could call overeating. But those signals are really helpful, especially as we are eating the right foods. And it can really, I think that's one of the best things for guiding our journey.
Yeah, and really, and I think a lot of women, and I used to do this too, is like if I was hungry, I'd just drink more water, or I'd try and, like you sort of wear it as like a badge of honor, like I've got through the hunger, I'm looking skinny, but it just, sometimes I think about, like, oh, imagine what it'd be like to go back to eating my old diet, like 1200 calories, I'd just die. Like I literally, like it's torture. I think it would be torture.
So, yeah. And I did the same thing with water. I bet I was probably on the 1200 calorie a day diet for a while, but yeah, I would do that same thing when you're hungry, just to drink water. And I mean, that's another huge thing. I mean, a small thing that makes a huge difference is, I think, for most people, drinking less water, because we're so used to filling up on it. And a lot of times we digest our food a lot better when we're not overfilling ourselves with water. And we find that we can actually eat more and not gain weight just from drinking less water. I think it actually makes a pretty big difference, because when we have too much water, just to mention the physiology real quick, it reduces the sodium levels in our blood, and that leads to the release of aldosterone, which is a stress hormone. So it's activating our stress systems just by drinking too much water. And that's actually why they say that water raises your metabolism. It's because it activates your stress systems, which it does cause you to burn energy, but or burn fuel, but not in a good way. It causes problems down the line.
Isn't it crazy? Like you think about like all of the typical fitness industry recommendations. Like I think about all the stuff, like I'll see people drink 3 liters of water a day, have 5 servings of green vegetables, eat your whey protein powder, your egg whites, don't eat any carbs at dinner, don't eat sugar, don't eat carbs before bed, don't eat dairy. You think, oh my God, like every single thing is working against you to build a
Yeah.
strong metabolic base. Like, it's funny that you talk about the water because I was, I don't know, just downstairs in the kitchen. I think I was filling up the coffee machine with water, and I was thinking, fuck, I don't reckon I've drunk any water for a week. Like I'll go like honestly a week without drinking a drop of water because, and people are like, oh, you're not drinking any water, but I drink a lot of other liquids that obviously have water in them, like and fruit, lots of juice, lots of coffee, milk. But obviously they have other vitamins and minerals in them too, which is really beneficial. But I think that would blow people's minds if they're like, oh, what do you mean, Kitty? You haven't had any water? Like I literally don't think I've drunk water for a week.
Yeah, I can't say the same because it's summer here. It's pretty hot, and if
Yeah,
I'm exercising, I do want at least some water. But if I have watermelon, I mean that's typically a pretty good substitute. Yeah, I don't drink very much either, very much
Isn't
at
it
all.
crazy, eh? And to think you used to I used to force it in.
Oh yeah, yeah, me too.
It's just insane. Let's talk quickly about sugar because I think I even though I know some people have been following for a while. Oh, sugar, we've heard about sugar, but lots of new followers. They just get so I think caught up in the sugar and sugar is bad and let's talk about sugar.
Sure. Yeah, well, and even, I mean, we're talking about it as far as juice versus water goes. And we have this assumption that calories as a whole are bad. So why would you have some liquid with all these extra calories in it? When again, as we were mentioning earlier, those calories are supportive for us. Those are the things that help to increase our metabolism in a way that helps our bodies to function better. So, but yeah, and sugar is one of those nutrients that does that. So I don't know, it's a tough place. There's so many places to start because there's so much there's so much anti-sugar propaganda out there, if you will. But sugar is really the ideal fuel on the cellular basis if we want to be producing energy as efficiently as possible. And so for that reason, our brains prefer to be running on sugar, and they can use ketones, but that's kind of a whole separate topic. And if our bodies are in a state where they're producing ketones, they're already under a lot of stress. So that aside, our brains can't use fat because fat is nowhere near as efficient as sugar. So instead they have to rely on sugar. And so the general basis there being that if we're depriving our bodies of this ideal fuel, then the fuel that we're left with results in a lot less energy for our bodies to run. And there's all sorts of mechanisms that help to regulate this. So we have the sugar in our blood, or our blood sugar. And when our blood sugar, it's such a tightly regulated system that when our blood sugar drops, it activates these extensive stress systems to bring our blood sugar back up. Because if it were to drop too far, it would mean no fuel for our brain and we would die. And it's just to mention how tightly regulated it is. We typically only have about 5 teaspoons of sugar in our blood at any time, which is really not very much. And of course, if you're eating a lot of sugar, that means that it's going through your blood and then into your cells for them to use it as fuel, or it's being stored as glycogen or whatever else. But yeah, or the carbohydrate, which sugar is just a carbohydrate. We have this, maybe I should have started there, but
It's poison, Kitty. It's poison. I'm like, well, if it was poison, I'd be dead 5 years ago. Like it's crazy. Yeah. It's not poison. Sorry, keep going.
Sure. So sugar, when we're talking about white sugar, it's a combination of glucose and fructose. And when we're talking about a starch, for example, or a complex carbohydrate, that's almost all glucose. But there's a lot of benefits to having that fructose component. But yeah, the sugar in our environment is a pretty major regulator of our metabolism. And when we have enough carbohydrate, enough sugar in our environment, that activates or increases all of these signals that increase our metabolism. It activates our thyroid hormones. It keeps our blood sugar steady, which keeps our stress hormones low. And then it also goes through all these other processes that help to increase our reproductive hormones. These are all things that keep our metabolism going and in turn help us to lose body fat. And when we don't have those things, it does the opposite. It activates our stress hormones. It decreases our thyroid hormones. It decreases our reproductive hormones, and it puts us under a lot of stress. It doesn't feel good. It makes you hungry. It makes you crave carbohydrates.
Mm.
You know, one of the best ways there's all these ideas of how to reduce carb cravings, whether it's eating a
I'm
lot
like,
of
just eat
fiber
sugar.
or
Yeah,
drinking a
just eat
lot of
some
water or
sugar.
something. But yeah, just
Yeah.
eat carbs, eat what your body needs. And
Mm.
there's a reason why we have those cravings. And that's because of how important of a fuel those carbohydrates are on the
Mm.
cellular level. So,
I think too, like when people like they say, "Oh, yeah, but Kitty, but I cut out sugar from my diet and I started feeling so much better." I'm like, "Yeah, but what were you eating before?" You know, and they're like, "Oh,
yeah.
I was eating like, like just takeaway shit food with loads of vegetable oils and flour and preservatives and additives, and so there was some sugar in there, but and they just blame the sugar, but what they don't realize
Hmm.
is it's all the other crap that you're eating. It's not the sugar. And when your diet is really nutrient dense and liver and oysters and all the other nutrients, it's easy to digest, then the sugar is not a problem. Like white sugar is just energy. It's just energy devoid of nutrients. Like it's so funny, like when or when people say, oh yeah, but white sugar, like the fruit sugar is okay, but white sugar's
Hmm.
not okay. It's like it's the same.
Yeah, it's the
We
same
throw
sugar.
that into the same shit. It's like, but fruit just has vitamins and minerals and fiber and extra free molecules of glucose and fructose. It's like, of course you don't want to just get all of your carbohydrates from plain white sugar. That would just
Right.
be silly, right? Like, um, yeah, but and also too, like something that really hit home for me when I was working with Emma initially and just learning everything. She's like, Kitty, like your body, like why would it crave something that's poison? Perhaps your body has built-in mechanisms to tell you what it needs, and instead of you feeling like you're weak, you should listen to it and eat some more of these foods that contain sugar and have some more white sugar in your diet and look at how you feel, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, that makes sense, and you eat more sugar and all of a sudden you just feel better. You feel calmer. Um, yeah, it's just, and if you've been eating a real shit diet and you clean it up and you take a lot of the crap out, of course you're going to feel better. But long term, like
Hmm.
it's going to end in pain. Yeah, but it's hard because the fitness industry, again, like it's just, there's so much anti-sugar
Yeah. Yeah.
out there.
And as you said, I mean, the sugary foods that most people are eating are not. It's a lot more than sugar that's in there.
Mm,
It's not the sugar itself that's the problem. It's the polyunsaturated fats in the vegetable oils
mm,
and the potentially the flour and whatever else that people don't digest well.
mm.
So yeah, we're not we're not saying to eat cakes and donuts and unless they're made with good ingredients.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that's a really hard one I find with clients initially. Like they're just trying to get over the sugar. But one thing I always say to women, I'm like I've learnt now that my body is the best teacher. Like honestly, like, you can read and research all you want, but just eat the food. Like I say, look at the overall guidelines and just test and measure and follow the basic principles. And then you will see when you eat it. And like you say, listen to how your body responds to it, how you're feeling, how you're sleeping, and you track everything. And all of a sudden you're like, because you can prove it to yourself in the data. Like, often, sometimes I'll like eat more food and get on the scales. It's like, I've got this thing in my head. It's like, I still maybe deep down think that I shouldn't be eating so much food. But
Yeah.
when I track it and eat it and jump on the scales, it's like, and look at myself, I'm like, you're proving, Kitty, that it's fine. Your body is telling you need to eat more. So eat more. It's okay. I think, but it still can, because you're constantly surrounded by that. Eat less, eat less, eat less. You need to eat less.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that self-guided experimentation I think is such a huge part of all of this. And yeah, everything that we're taught is that we shouldn't be considering how we feel and we really need to be resisting that. We need to be fighting our urges
Mm,
for all these different foods. And
mm,
yeah, you don't want to go to the gym because you haven't eaten enough and you're feeling terrible, but you need to force it and you need to do an hour of cardio in the morning and then you need to go later and hit the machines or weights or whatever it is. And yeah, this whole idea that rather than listening to what our bodies are telling us and trusting them, which rather than doing that, we're supposed to fight against them. And as you said, the physiology is in place to direct us in the right way, because
mm,
otherwise we wouldn't be here right now. Uh,
mm,
if you consider animals in the wild, they're not intentionally dieting in any way, but they're naturally lean.
mm,
And like salt and water is a good example here, we had talked a little bit about sugar cravings, but as far as salt and water goes, we're really good at knowing when we're dehydrated and drinking enough water, and knowing when we don't have enough salt and eating enough salt, to the
Mm,
point where, I mean, our taste for those things was developed to do that. And it's the
mm,
same for other animals too. And the same goes for again, our sugar cravings and whatever else. The disclaimer though does have to be that there are a lot of foods now that weren't around when these signals were being developed. And as we
mm.
were talking about earlier, the vegetable oils and polyunsaturated fats are a big component there. So, fried chicken might taste really good and we might have cravings for it, but it doesn't mean that it's helping us. But that also doesn't mean that we need to be ignoring our cravings either. Our cravings are still saying something. They're
Mm.
just not saying fried chicken. They're saying that I need enough fat, or I need enough protein, or salt, or whatever it is.
That's so true. Because, like, I used to remember I used to just smash those bloody donuts. Donut King. Do you have Donut King in this? Is it in the States too? But
I don't know about Donut King, which tells you that wasn't something that I had. But we have like those like little packaged
or Krispy
donuts. I think we have
Kremes. Do you have
donuts.
Krispy
We have
Kremes?
crispy. Yeah, we have
Oh,
Krispy Kreme.
remember like those just plain glazed ones? Like we would buy like big boxes and just eat them, and
Yeah,
obviously they
yeah,
taste amazing, but they're just dirty and you just would feel so shit afterwards. Like I
yeah,
always notice now, because I don't eat a lot of bread now or sourdough. I've sort of cut that out on a regular basis. I just noticed that even a small slice is just wasn't causing bad digestive issues, but you just feel more optimized. I don't even know how to describe it. You'll change something. And occasionally though, I'll have like, there's this amazing Italian place near us that does this, like they're like 30 years old, ridiculous pizza, just flour and water and all these yum toppings. But oh God, it just makes me fart, and like makes me feel really like the next day, I feel puffy. Like my
yeah,
face feels puffy and I can just feel it. So I don't do that all the time, obviously. But I think, once you get really optimized and you understand what really good digestion's like, having a good couple of poos every day, sleeping well, balancing your blood sugar, and then you'll go and eat something like that. And you're like, whoa, like that before you didn't, because you felt shit all the time.
yeah,
You just don't
yeah,
realize how shit you felt.
yeah, yeah. I think that's a perfect way to put it. Uh, and I think most people are in that position, or not. I don't know about most, but a lot of people don't realize that their digestion isn't normal, or
Mm-hmm.
that they're going to the bathroom twice or three times a week, and that's not normal. And a lot of times they don't know that until maybe a doctor mentions it, or they read, they hear something about it. But yeah, I mean, we get very used to not feeling good.
Yeah, yeah. And you don't, and then you go back and you're like, wow, this is what I used to feel like. It's like, because I don't really drink much anymore. I used to just drink heaps of alcohol and take drugs.
Mhm.
I was like a real party girl when I was younger. And every now and then I'll have a drink now, but maybe like 2 to 3. And every time I drink, I just feel it the next day, even 2 to 3. And I think, fuck, how did I used to, like, were you a drinker ever? We,
No, not really.
that's
Not
good.
really.
Neither
I
was
mean, like
Craig. Yeah,
no.
he didn't drink much. Nah, that's good.
I mean,
One less bad
yeah.
habit you have to break.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, I would, like, equivalent things, like it would be, sleep, for example, where I would, go by on, I don't know, 5 or 6 hours of sleep so much of the time. And that's a huge one that
Mm,
people will say that they're fine on 5 or 6 hours of sleep. And, that's just how they live. And I know that I'm a different person when I'm not getting enough sleep. When I'm getting 6 hours of sleep,
mm,
my sense of humor is gone. Like my personality is gone. It makes a huge difference. And that's something that is such a normal sacrifice for people, whether
mhm.
it's that they have a busy job or other aspects of their life. It's not something that we consider that much, to sacrifice a couple hours of sleep per night, but it makes a huge difference.
Oh, it's crazy. And I think, like, y- and again, like, I don't mean to keep saying that you're young, but like you're 25, like when you get, like people, when they get to their 40s and 50s, it's like these issues that you develop, they don't happen overnight. It's like the death by 1,000 cuts, isn't it? So like
Mm,
this cumulative effect of all of that stress on your body. So it's cutting the sleep short, the work stress, the alcohol, the hormonal contraception, low calorie dieting, not eating the right nutrients, not getting enough sun. And then over the years and years and years, that just chips away at you. And then all of a sudden your body just starts breaking down. You're like, fuck, how did I get here? Like, and then it's this process of, I guess, trying to, like, I sort of think about it like a bank. Like you're trying to make deposits in your metabolic bank because it's so depleted. Like you've just for years and years and years withdrawn. And I think that can take a long time, you know, depending on how long you've done it for. Like, how awesome is it that you're 25 and you found this, or 22? How old were you when you found it?
Probably about 20
Oh,
to
that's the
19,
best.
20. Yeah.
How good's that?
Yeah. I guess 19 probably, I would say. So yeah,
Oh, imagine,
that is
what
good.
you'll be like. You'll be so optimized when you're 40. You'll be like this, you know, like that's so awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. It
You-
isn't, that is nice. It's nice to think of it that way. I also started young with all the dieting, everything too. When I was
Mm.
maybe 12, 13, I
Wow.
was eating very, very little, probably under 1,000 calories a lot of days. And I was in sports and everything. And
Wow.
it's always hard to look back and wonder how much that affected me in any way down the line.
Mm.
But I don't think it's anything that you can't move back from. But yeah, it's that. I mean, that's what I was saying earlier. The eat less and exercise more. I mean, and I don't think I was all that unique with that. I think that a lot of kids in middle
Mm.
school and definitely throughout high school and definitely in college
Mm.
are starving themselves.
Oh, totally.
And
You can get away
yeah,
with it in your 20s. You know, like I think about what I used to do and how I could just go out, drink all night, starve myself for a week, exercise every day, work like crazy, and just back it up. You know, like I could never do that now. But I don't really, you can get away with it. But then, like, you get to your 30s and you start to see the effects. It's like you say, the death by a thousand cuts. It's, we can see why people have kids when they're young, right? Like, you can just cope better with the less, you know, with the sleep. Like, I think, oh, we haven't had any kids, but if we have a kid, I'll be 40. I'm like, oh, I'm just going to die with that no sleep for 3 months. It's going to kill me.
oh man,
Oh,
yeah.
but it's good. Like, hopefully, like younger people, you know, younger women and younger men listen to this, and you know, if they're stuck in that cycle, they, you know, get out of it early because it will just be so much better for them in the long run.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And considering how much of an influence media and the things around you is at that time. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely I would love to be able to talk to myself at that point. So
Mm. Yeah, like you look at the Kardashians and, you know, like the real famous, and they just on these constant diets. Like they do this diet for like they get into the best shape of their life, and you look at their diet and it's like fucking 1,500 calories, and they're training every day, and you think, oh, how long will this last? You know, and they're just full of Botox and fillers, and you know, it's just, you just can see why women and men would think, oh, well, that's what I've got to do, you know, because that's
yeah,
what the celebrities do.
it's normal. It's
Mm.
normal not to eat very much. I feel like a broken record. I talk about the Minnesota starvation experiment a lot,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
one of the most astounding things about it, just for people who don't know, it's this experiment where it's like the late 40s, early 50s, they wanted to see the effect of starvation and how easily you could recover from it.
Mm.
This was during the Second World War, and so there's a lot of areas of the world where they didn't have a lot of food. There were food rations and things, and they basically went from a normal diet for these men who were between 20 and 30 years old, average weight about 150 to 160 pounds. Their normal diet where they're maintaining their weight was around 3,300 calories. They
Mm.
put them on an 1,800 calorie diet, and long story short, it was disastrous. It was terrible. Like they all felt absolutely terrible. Some had the psychotic breaks. It was just incredibly deteriorating to their health.
Mm.
And after the several months of the starvation, the 1,800 calorie diet, it then took them a couple of years of eating as much as 5,000 calories a day to feel normal again and feel like themselves. And I think the craziest thing about this is I don't know anybody who's between 150 and 160 pounds who eats anywhere near 3,300 calories in a day. And that was normal at the time. And it goes to show how much our modern food has dropped down our metabolism, and I would say also just things that have kind of been passed on hereditarily from this
Mm.
influence of our environment, where you have a parent who is in a poor environment, and then certain aspects of that get passed on,
Mm.
and we're lowering our metabolism more and more, and it comes at a cost of being able to think clearly and have proper functioning digestive systems and reproductive systems and immune systems, which of
Mm.
course is a big thing right now. So yeah, it's incredible how normalized 1,800, 2,000 calorie diets are. I mean, those aren't even diets for some people. It's just what you eat.
Mm.
And yeah, it's astounding.
Oh, and then too, like it's as well, you throw in all the other stresses like we talked about, the work, the kids, maybe doing a really stressful job to try and maintain a lifestyle that potentially you can't maintain to impress other people, and, alcohol and drugs and, antidepressants and hormonal contraception. Like every woman just about is on the bloody pill or has the
Mhm.
Mirena in. I mean, I took the pill for a long time. And it's just this cumulative effect, isn't it? And then all the
Yeah.
toxins that we put in our skin and, makeup and shampoo and conditioner and cleaning products. It's just, yeah, it's it
Yeah.
actually like it. Wow. Like when you really think about it, you're like, it's just everything's stacked up against us, you can
Yeah.
see why
Yeah. It's
people are so wrecked.
yeah. Yeah. We're stuck in this wheel, in this cycle, this vicious
Mm-hmm.
cycle. And you'd mentioned like job and then buying things you don't need, and this consumerism, and how big of
Mm-hmm.
of a how big of an influence that is. I mean, it's funny to think that, 100 years ago, people were saying that, with technology in the future, we would only need to work 1 day a week or whatever it was. And we've just gone so far the opposite, where we work more and more, and we just have more things that of course we don't need. And that's, as you were saying, that's such a huge tax of our bodies. It's like we're giving this energy from our bodies, and we're withering away to buy nice cars and a nice house, or whatever it is, as opposed to spending time with the people that we love, or enjoying,
Doing
time out
fulfilling
in
work.
nature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you
Or
think
yeah, helping people. Yeah.
Yeah, how many people, like I've talked to friends of mine, and they're like just always under stress because they've overcommitted themselves and they've got like multiple mortgages, but they're like, I'm just sacrificing now so that, when I retire. And I'm like, you're gonna fucking spend the next 30 years of your life being stressed, and then what are you gonna do when you retire? Like just nothing.
Yeah.
Like sit in your house, so that it blows my mind, I think. But you know what? Like I lived in Dubai for 3 years, and like we earned good money there, and I just wasted so much money on stupid shit that I didn't need. Like I've got a bloody cupboard full of designer handbags and shoes that I never wear, like high heels I never wear. But yeah, I can see how people fall into the trap, the
Yeah.
new
Oh,
cars.
absolutely.
And yeah, I mean, it's not like I'm not saying that you should never buy yourself some nice stuff, like that's not, but I think, yeah, we can get stuck in that trap of buying things to impress other people, not because we really want them. Um, yeah, and look, I mean, I'm a bit of obsessive personality, like, and I love our work, so like I would just work relentlessly, and sometimes I have to like pull myself back and go, hang on a second, like you've pushed your stress threshold too far, kitty. You need to have a rest. You know,
Hmm.
go
Yeah.
spend
Oh,
time
I
with
feel the same
Craig
way.
and walk in the sun and go down to the beach. And I think it's sometimes your natural personality is either way, but just recognizing that. Um,
Yeah. It's different when you're doing something you're passionate about also, as opposed to doing something for the money and working
yeah,
yourself in the same way. It doesn't feel the same, I don't think so.
yeah. I just want every woman to be free. I just want every woman to feel like I feel and love their body and feel strong and empowered and live their best life. Like, and when women text me messages saying those things, I'm like, fuck yes. So it's the most, like, it just gives you this incredible feeling, because
Hmm.
that like and I think you would probably agree with me that like you can't live your best life if you are dieting all the time. Like you have to look after yourself and nourish your body and sleep. And like once you do this, I think it frees you, and your mind opens to like the possibilities of what else can I do with my life? Am I living my best life? Am I doing what I love? Am I with the right person? And I'm a touch of wood. I don't want to die, but if I died tomorrow, I wouldn't regret anything that haven't done. I feel like every day I'm getting up and I'm living my best life, like truly. And that starts with this. It starts with the nutrition. And I just love strength training, obviously, but I'm just biased because I love it. But
I think freedom is such a good word for it.
mm,
Uh, like free, it's we don't realize the weight of that fight against food and that fight against our bodies, and it's just constantly there. And yeah, it's freedom. It's night and day. It's such a difference to
mm,
not have that constantly weighing you down, constantly in the back of your mind, holding you back, preventing you from having the energy to do any of these things that we're talking about.
Mhm. Oh, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It's been so good and so nice to talk to you face to face. And so just tell the viewers again, like where they can find you and your podcast, and subscribe to his podcast. It's really awesome.
Thanks. Yeah, my website is jayfeldmanwellness.com. And from there, I've got articles and my podcast you can get to from there. The podcast is called the Energy Balance Podcast, which is kind of anywhere you listen to podcasts, you can subscribe to it. And yeah, I would head to my website. There's a lot of good information there. And I do, as you had mentioned, I do coaching with clients, and I have an online course, and you can check out those things from the services tab on my website. So.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. And I'll have to get you on again soon, and we can talk about a more specific topic, not just a general chit chat. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I would love to.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jay. Bye.
Thanks, Katie. Bye.